Welcome back to Practical and by now you know, Prophetic, where I'm your host, Learn with Tara, or as I always say, you can call me Tara, all right? It don't even matter. You call me sis, you can call me queen, you can call me mama, some of you, depending on your age. But anyway, if this is your first time, hey, how you doing? Make sure you subscribe. Make sure if you find value in this episode, you comment because we want to chat back with you and make sure you share. Listen, we're going to get right into this episode, okay? As you can see, this title is kind of intense, but I'm so happy that we are having this conversation with a man of God, okay? Listen, it's a lot of conversations that's happening out there. And we tend to highlight women, especially when it comes to dating, especially when it comes to talking about relationships. But we definitely want to hear from our brothers. We want to hear from the men of God. So I am so honored to have Team 1K up in the building.
Yeah.
Okay?
Oh yeah. Glad to be here.
Big Team 1K.
On me.
Okay. So Team 1K, tell the people, who are you?
I'm 1K, little town in Broward County, Florida called Carver Ranches, West Park, Hollywood. Born and raised in Florida, and very much thankful from where I'm from. Taught me a lot, learned a lot. God has dealt with me a lot in my community, and has made me a pillar of my community in the area and aspect of faith. So,
Okay, so first off, Broward County, that's intense.
yeah.
We not really gonna get into your backstory because it's not the topic of conversation right
Oh
now.
yeah.
But we do need to we need to talk about it a little bit because that's from what I hear. I don't know, Broward County is super tough.
Oh yeah.
And
Especially in recent years.
okay,
Yeah.
so
It's
as you were
definitely.
growing up, this was your environment. What was that environment like?
Um, our neighborhood is pretty much known, before all of the shooting and the spinning that goes on in the lyrics. We're a neighborhood, you got Hollandale, Carver Ranches, you got Liberia, Dania Beach, um, Miramar. A lot of fighting went on. So we grew up in gladiator camp.
Yeah,
A lot of times we had to fight. We didn't have guns. We grew up, you had to learn how to fight. And if you didn't know, they made you know.
yeah,
And that's kind of how it was. It was a lot of drug dealing um, going on. We grew up, we right there by Miami.
yeah. This was
So
your norm.
yeah,
Okay,
so yeah, that's how it was. And you basically, whatever toughness that you had to get, you got it from my community. And it really has shaped me and
yeah,
has shaped me into the man that I am today. And I'm thankful for being from Broward.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. I definitely, I always say to any guest that I can relate to, I can relate for sure, especially from some of your backstory that I do know about.
Oh yeah.
So, okay, we're here to talk about a very commonly conversated topic. Okay, we talking about, divorce. Most times we don't hear divorce stories when it comes to men. We don't hear from men. Part of that is because some men just don't talk about it. Like we don't men a lot of times are not vulnerable, open, vocal. But then other times a lot of men feel like we don't have a space, right? Or they feel unheard. Is that true?
Oh yeah. I mean, me personally, I grew up, my cousin from my neighborhood, my dad, my mom, and I grew up around crackheads, and I grew up around people who were just vocal, and what you see is what you get type of people. My cousin Corey, back home from the ranches, as we call it, he didn't hold anything back. He's always expressed himself, and he's expressed himself to me. So that wasn't really an issue for me. So I'm always that type of person where if I feel it, I'm gonna say it.
Yeah.
Sometimes to a fault, and you know that.
I do.
But however, a lot of men do struggle
Yeah.
with speaking and vulnerability, and they try to fight these battles, whether it be divorce, relationships, or what has happened. It's like they come across as if they're this hard person, but really on the inside they're hurt. And sometimes that is portrayed throughout their relationships, and they carry it over. And a lot of women suffer because of it. And I think it's important for us to get it out there, or we
Wow.
will suffer in silence. And then we cope in unhealthy ways, which I have in the past as well.
Wow. See, what you're talking about now is what kind of drew me to your platform. So, y'all, we are fellow influencers. I think we met each other on TikTok, right? Shared some rooms
Oh,
and
yeah.
some conversations like on You know, when they were hosting. I don't see that too often now where people are like on platforms together hosting different conversations and stuff like that. But I always liked like your openness and your vulnerability and you talking about your story. That's how I know about your divorce initially. So your relationship. Tell us a little bit about that. Like, how old were you when you got married?
I was about 21. I got
Okay.
married in December of 2010
Okay.
in South Florida, and then I went into active. I was already in the streets ministering to my community and the people in my community, kind of outside of the four walls, in the neighborhood, standing on the block, at the park. Got married, and then transitioned to Louisville, Kentucky, where I lived in Louisville, Kentucky for about 8 years, and I lived in Missouri as well for about 7 to 8 months, just preaching, appointment preaching, ministry, full-time ministry for like 2 years. And yeah, so from 21 and then end up separating in 2019.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was that something that you drove, or is that something that just happened? Like,
As far as the separation,
yeah.
um, I always wanted to. I tried to fight the right way, right?
Okay.
I've tried to go to therapy and counseling, but unfortunately, everybody's not in that space. And so before I saw myself becoming angered, because when a person is in a state of resentment, in a state of bitterness, and it's crazy. Like even in the midst of the church, you can find yourself in toxic situations. And myself, before I got in trouble or before I allowed my anger get the best of me, I thought that, and after offering everything and that didn't work, at that time, I thought I didn't want to separate, but I saw myself needing to separate before my anger got the best of me. So we kind of agreed to do that. But with my separation, it wasn't separation, now you're single, separation, do what you want and, indefinite. I just wanted to separate for a time, go to therapy, go to counseling, and then regroup for a few months.
Right.
Not years.
Right.
So what turned in my mind to be, a couple months and then get back together, regroup, and try to revisit it a different way, turned into 2 years, 2.5 years.
And that wasn't your preference.
That wasn't my preference.
And by the way, because I know a little bit about your story, that wasn't something that, you never saw yourself being without your wife.
No.
You were like deeply in love with your wife.
Yeah. And I wouldn't even say necessarily so much in love, but I was in love with the covenant that I made with God. And that's what kept me. Yeah.
Wow.
So I didn't have any butterflies. I wasn't always happy, but my commitment to God is what drove me. And so I woke up daily throughout separation, throughout her mistakes. That wasn't the issue. If that was the issue, I would have been done a long time ago.
Yeah.
But I know that things are, when it comes to God, it's not always about happiness. It's about covenant. And so I
beg
focused
to
on
differ.
that. Yeah.
I have a differing opinion.
Yeah.
So let me just make sure I like articulate this well. And you and I, we definitely have had, conversations where we don't see things eye to eye when it comes to certain things from a biblical standpoint. But I think that one thing that I was taught a long time ago is when you are a believer, right, and you enter a marriage, marriage is ministry. I agree with that, right? Because it's a reflection of God, Christ being the bridegroom and the church being the bride. And the Bible talks about that. You know that. But I think that there's like this really toxic narrative in the church where we talk so much about the ministry aspect. We don't talk about the fact that marriage is meant for each other first. Because like when you go back to the garden, Adam was alone and he had everything, including access to the Godhead, the whole entire Spirit of God. So that meant that there was a depth of fulfillment that me and you, we would never experience that Adam did, right? Because he has access to the Spirit of God himself. But God is the one that said, man don't need to be alone. He decided to give him a wife. It was a gift. So I do believe that in marriage, there should be a sense of happiness.
Oh,
that
yeah,
doesn't
yeah,
mean
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and I'm
I'm not talking about that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm saying in terms of when you're in the covenant, you're not always going to be happy.
Absolutely.
There's going to
For
be
sure.
ups and downs.
Yeah.
So when getting into it, it should be you serving the man serving the woman serving the man, and you trying to meet their needs where they are to keep the relationship going, to keep it vibrant.
Yeah.
But I'm
Just
just
loving on
saying,
each other.
throughout that time, that may not. The
Oh,
reality
for
is
sure.
that might not happen.
You talking to somebody that's been married
Yeah,
like
yeah.
14, 15 years and divorced. So I get it. Like I think we agree.
Oh yeah.
Okay, because I just want to make sure, I just wanted to make sure you wasn't saying like, because Stephen, I know you know what I'm talking about. A lot of people out here just miserable thinking that ministry goes before that. Ministry goes before the two people actually, being beneficial for each other, just as two humans existing. A lot of people feel like, well, that's not the point. Like, as long as God is being glorified, but how can he be glorified if the thing is by force, if it's just constant misery?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, yeah. I agree with that. And I think that's a balance, and that I take full accountability in that, because sometimes in that, a coping mechanism when you're in ministry is to focus on the ministry as opposed to putting in work with your spouse. And sometimes we forget that, and to where we spend time trying to make everybody else happy and trying to save everybody else, and we're losing our own household.
Wow.
And I had to realize, and I was 22, 23, 24,
Yeah.
25. You don't really see that going into it. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? You just focus on that. And then when things go left, you're like, look, I got to serve God. And you can get lost in ministry. But I'm reminded of what Paul said, I believe in 1 Corinthians 7. He says, the married man has to care for the things of his spouse, and the wife has to care about the things of the woman, of her husband. And so that's something that we need to consider. And I think that can be neglected, and that leads to a host of other problems if you don't catch it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's so good. I had a different perspective too. I got married young. I think I was 19 or 20. And we was together for a long time, and we had ministry leaders who promoted and pushed for the marriage and all this other stuff. And I was just, for me, it's like I just want to honor and love God, obey God. And I'm thinking I just need to obey God and do this, right? And honored the marriage. I did. I honored the marriage when I was in there, learned how to be a wife. Wasn't a good one in the beginning. Well, I won't say I wasn't a good one. It was a lot I didn't know, like about, I was still becoming a woman. You know what I'm saying? I still did as much as I could, but it was a lot I was missing as far as like, actually capturing what that meant. But I learned how to do it, and I did it well. And I think that one of the things that I was force fed was like, you just need to, like, you have a conviction of God. So no matter what you're going through in your marriage, you just keep serving your husband. You just keep. And I was even told, Stephen, believe it or not, that 99.999% the marriage is based on the wife. Like it's her. She drives and determines it. And I took so much of the burden of that marriage, regardless of what was taking place, what I was experiencing or feeling or not getting or whatever, and just always internalize it and work so hard to like, work for this thing without the reciprocity. And we're going to talk about that here in a minute when we get into relationships, like the necessity of reciprocity and how that's even God ordained. Like it's a God ordained thing. It's not wrong to want something from somebody, from your spouse or from your person. And it's not wrong for them to want something. So apparently there was some unmet needs, unmet wants that led you and your ex-wife into a separation. And you're left dealing with that. And it seems like, based on what you're saying, it's not something that you desire. It's not something that you fought for the marriage, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. During and after separation.
Yeah.
And divorce.
Yeah.
Yeah. Until
And
I
just
got to
to be
the point,
clear,
yeah.
it's a lot of people out there that be like, what he do? This is not a man of infidelity.
Oh no, I tried my best to hold it down.
Yeah.
Been tempted throughout the marriage, but throughout the marriage, there has been a couple temptations, a couple moments of temptation. But I went to God in prayer. I fought, and I actively, daily, it was in my mind to wear my ring and to turn down any interest or anything. But there has been times in my marriage that if I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, things could have happened. But
Yeah,
God
but
kept me, and I maintained, and I tried to endure to the best of my ability.
Okay, so what did life look like? So you're a father as well, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that's something that I didn't get to mention, but I want to say now. So you guys had a son.
Oh yeah.
So what was life like after the divorce? Like from a mental health standpoint, you being a single father, you having to adjust. What did that look like in that season for you?
Can we back up to separation?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
when we separated and toward the end of 2019, I moved back to Florida with my son,
Okay. From
with our
what,
son,
Kentucky
Kentucky,
or
from
Miss?
Louisville.
Okay.
Yeah, from Louisville, and went back to Florida. And I went back because I thought it was for just a season, just for a little while. I went back to my mom's house. So I'm back in the trenches again after being out of the hood. Just I used to go back and visit, but
Yeah.
and I told her, and I'm like, I really don't want to go to Florida, but to me, that's where I needed to go.
Yeah. You needed
And
some sense of familiarity.
yeah, but I kind of regret it. But I regret going back to Florida. But it was a gift and a curse, and I really, yeah. So I moved back to Florida with our son, and he never been in that environment. He used to go and visit, but now he's in the hood and he's seeing where his dad grew up. He's seeing my homeboys. He's with other kids. So we went from worshiping in a predominantly, white
Caucasian
church,
church, right.
yeah, to back in the hood again.
Yeah.
And now, he's like, Daddy, man, all your homeboys and all your friends, they look like Kodak Black, and they look like this, and they got goals and tatted up, and they got wicks, dreads in their head, and he's thrown in this environment. I'm like, yeah, this is where I come from. You never saw this side fully, but this is where I come from, and we're here. And so I went from living a life with my wife in ministry to back in the house on the couch with my mom.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying?
And
And my
how old
aunt.
was your son at this time?
He's 11 now, so 9,
Okay.
10, 11, yeah.
Okay. Wow. That's drastic.
Yeah.
So what were you in that moment, like in your mind?
When I first got there, it was fresh, so our relationship wasn't that disturbed. Like there was still love there, but over time, after she got into a certain place where she wasn't ready, she was going through her own trials and tribulations at the time, and she was kind of shutting down. It began to take a toll when I saw that she wasn't really trying to fight, and I saw that she was drifting, being comfortable in her singleness, and really wasn't interested, kind of checked out.
Yeah.
That's when it took a toll on me, and then I started to panic inwardly, like I felt like I was about to lose my family, which I ultimately did. And I had to also not only deal with my mental health issues, but I had to also deal with a son who missed his mom and who was happy to see his dad go through anger, go through pain, going back to smoking, and just in the state of turmoil mentally and emotionally that he never seen. So trying to process his emotions, my emotions, while at the same time holding the fort down as a father.
Yeah.
It was pretty rough.
Wow.
I lost myself. And it's crazy
Wow.
how you can go from being a minister and a pillar to my homeboys in the hood like, Steve, get it together. These are people in the streets telling me to get myself back together because they feel like I'm losing myself in the midst of this. And yeah, to be at the mountaintop per se, to go all the way back to the bottom, to the valley, it was a very trying time for me.
Man, that's definitely trying. Sometimes people don't realize that ministers are also men and women, right? And there goes that we are all human, having a spiritual experience, just navigating life, right, with Christ, but we still are people with flaws and people who, have feelings and people who have cares. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the Bible talks about a just man falls 7 times and what?
Yeah, he picked up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
And so I can't imagine like what you were experiencing in that moment, just like having to face as a man. Obviously, I'm not a man.
And you're not allowed to. Even my homeboys, they live way worse than I was living. But when I fell, they ridiculed me. I never judged them. I was in the trap with them, praying with them. I ministered to them online. Many of them, told me, but there was murmuring going, like, I thought he was a preacher. Look at him. He out here, because I carried my firearm when I was back in the neighborhood because there was so much going on. And I just, I was at a state where they saw me breaking down, and they always saw me as this pillar. But then when I broke down, I had homeboys was like, man, I looked at you. I looked up to you, past tense, look at you now. You're back here with us, etc. And I'm
Wow.
like, I never judge. You guys are always saying, judge not that you be judged. But you guys are, y'all looking at me
We
like
get that
this
so
Muhammad
much.
Ali that
Yeah.
failed. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? And great was the fall of it. And they're looking at me and I'm like, bro, like I'm hurting. But then you had those who did encourage me and was like, Steve, we with you, keep your head up. You know, we praying. And they even the hood, they was like, we praying for you, bro, keep your head up. And, you know, remember we look up to you. You know what I'm
Wow.
saying?
That's a lot. And that
Yeah.
was just what you said, like 2, 3 years ago?
Yeah, the divorce finalized in 2022. So from the pandemic, during the whole pandemic. So I was going through this during the pandemic. Nobody was going to worship
Oh my
anymore like
God.
that. And I had in 2021, March, right after my birthday, I fractured my leg on both sides. I had started a company, jet ski company in South Florida. I fractured my leg. I couldn't walk for like 3 or 4 months. So I was physically in turmoil, lost my job because I was working and starting my business. I lost my job, going through the separation process, still having to take my son to school. And so I was spiritually down, physically down at times, mentally, everything, and just processing it.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
That is so
yeah.
tough. So that process, how do you go from like that place with that much pain to being better? Because I don't, it's difficult to say like okay, because I don't think a person will ever just be okay with something that,
Yeah.
you know love is something that is not even explainable. It is God, and when you
Yeah.
really have your heart invested in somebody, it can be. I don't know if there's ever a resolve. I think there's an acceptance, right? An acceptance, and then there's like a progression from that.
Oh yeah.
But so, how do you go from like pain to being okay?
Seeing God in the midst of the trial. God revealing himself to me through the midst of the trial, through divine providence and the word. The word is the sword. And I had so much of it in me that even in the midst of those trials, I was being shaped because of the word that I had in me.
Yeah.
A lot of times people self-destruct because they don't have the foundation. I poured into myself so much
Oh, wow.
throughout so many years, and I had so many scriptures that when you have that much goodness in you, when you're squeezed,
Ooh.
the goodness of God comes out of it. And so, like gold purified by the fire, the more tests I had and the more trials and tribulations I had, even though I was breaking down mentally, God was continuing to shape me. And even though I was doubting God in the midst of it, I had near-death experiences on the ocean with the jet ski. I had to drive myself back to shore. I was 150 yards out with a fractured leg. I didn't hit my head. When I got to the shore, this is just an example of me seeing God in the midst of it. I wasn't even praying like that. The only prayer I prayed, I was leaning on the Holy Spirit making utterance for me that cannot be made with words. And the only prayer I was praying was, I don't know how I got here. God, have mercy on me. I'm sinning. I don't know how I got here. I don't know how long I'm going to be here, but I need you. And so in the midst of the hood, in the midst of that, like, for example, I fractured my leg. I'm looking at my leg on the jet ski. I'm riding back in. This is not a regular day on the beach, like a busy day. This is a light day. There's like 15 people on the beach. So I go to the beach, and who met me there were two nurses, two RNs, ready to wrap me up. This other guy helped me get my jet ski. Boom, they get there. They get me where I need it. So I'm looking at this, and I'm like, in the midst of this,
My God.
God put people in place.
My God.
I was in like 2 or 3 gun standoffs in the hood, and I saw him. Times where I could have been to prison, in the hood, and God has kept me. And so even in the midst of that, I saw how sufficient His grace was, and that drove me to like, God, I see you. I'm gonna bounce back. And I began to, the more pressure He put on me, I knew that I had to get out of that place. And that's what brought me to Dallas. So I saw all of these near things, these near deaths, and I kept getting warning after warning. So I had to pull myself out of Sodom and Gomorrah. I
Ooh.
pinched my tent towards Sodom by going there in the first place.
Going
I
back
shouldn't have
back
been there.
home. Going back home.
Yeah, I should have, but I shouldn't have it.
Right.
So what I did was, in order for me to get better, I had to remove myself from the environment. And now I'm at a state where I'm getting better. I'm not where I want to be, but I'm stabilizing
With your son.
with my son. And so with this stabilizing, God is building me up to then be, when I do go back, or when I do I'm going to be prepared better next time to deal
Do
with it.
you feel like that's where you're going to be? Are you going back home?
I'm not sure yet.
Okay.
I'm just gonna say, let God let your will be done.
Okay.
And if I have to go part time or if I have to talk to him online, that's what I do. But I'm playing it by ear.
Right,
If
right.
that makes sense.
Wow, Stephen, that's like very powerful.
Yeah.
You said some very powerful things. So I'm interested to know, like, what is your perspective now? Like, now that you are, you've been divorced, and you are a single man of God,
Full custody now.
and you
The
full
judge.
custody of your son.
I was afraid of
What?
that too. Yeah, I was afraid of that because
Wow.
there were some things being said that I won't name that I was like, man, I love my son. Like a lot of people be like, oh, a man can't do what a mother can do, or they don't feel like a mother feel. I was there.
Wow.
I changed diapers and I made bottles in the middle of the night consistently. I went to the PTA meetings. I did all of this. So I'm the mother too, in my mind. Like
Yeah.
I'm the father, but I care and I am a nurturer because I was raised by a strong woman and who taught me those things. And so I love my son and the things that I was said, like I said, God, I have to have my son. I was willing to, parent share and co-parent and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But yeah, I'm thankful that I have full custody and that I have full custody. Never was bitter, never was resentful. Never. A lot of people, if they were done a certain way or if they were neglected, they tend to lash out or they tend to be spiteful. I never wanted to be vengeful. I'm gonna put on child support, or I'm gonna do this, or I'm gonna, you know what I'm saying? That wasn't my end. I
Right.
still loved her in the midst of what she was going through, and I was like, I'm not gonna keep him from her, and whenever she needs to be there, I make it happen.
Wow.
So in the midst of it, yeah.
That's a lot to unpack. I think we got a second episode coming about just that alone, talking about
Oh
your
yeah,
son and how you have to, navigate his emotions
about
alone,
him. A
about
lot of
him,
times,
just in general.
and a lot of times in our households, and the reason why our children are suffering is because we're so focused on us being hurt that we forget about the kids. They
Talk
have
about
feelings and they
it.
have emotions.
Talk
You're trying to
about.
be vindictive and bitter toward them, and
Come
you're
on.
losing your child in the midst of it, and you're not allowing them things that they need because you weren't about your selfish needs. And I think we have to get outside of ourselves in order to focus on them and focus on God. It's not about you.
I wholeheartedly agree, and I must say that the majority of people that do that is women. And I'm a woman, and recently a single mother. Thank God that that thing is being, that co-parenting relationship is being restored as of now. Praise be to God. But I never understood that. I just never understood, because I've seen it happen to my brothers. I've seen it happen to other men of God, other friends that I know. And it's a lot of good black dads out here that love their kids, that want to be present. They may not want a relationship with a mother. In your case, it was different, but it's a lot of men out here who would prefer to be there, and they're prevented by bitter, spiteful women. And sometimes these women claim that they're women of God, that they love God, they know God, they claim Christianity, and that is one of the most unchristian things to do, because you're hurting your child, you're hurting your seed, and you're using life against someone, because a child, a person, represents life. It's the very source that was created from these two people. You're withholding that. I've seen somebody I know and love face suicide because of a woman doing that.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's sad. Like, if it's any woman out there watching, especially believers, if that's you and you're withholding your child or using your child as a tool of war against your ex-spouse, your ex-baby daddy, that's wrong, sis. Like, that's not God. And you're not doing nothing but hurting your seed. You're hurting
Oh
your
yeah.
child.
Romans 12. So vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. That doesn't just mean, see, a lot of people see that and they think about fighting, or they think about shooting, or they think about putting bananas in people's tailpipe and sugar in people's tank. No, people use, like you said, they use that thing which they know to hurt the man the most. And that's not to negate the fact that the man hurt them. The man probably hurt them and the man probably drove them to the ground, probably used, abused, or
In
whatever to
some
them.
cases, right.
In some cases, in many cases. However, the children should not be used as a weapon of war. We still have to, at the end of the day, that person is not the enemy. The enemy is the enemy. And the Bible says the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but they are mighty in the spirit, bringing down strongholds. It says we wrestle not against flesh and blood. And I think that's what, when we focus on the fleshly aspect of it, we begin to war in the flesh. And one of those ploys that's used is the child. But like Romans 12, I believe it's 21, it says, do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. And I think that's what we forget, and we lose ourselves, and we end up hurting the generation, our children, and we
Absolutely.
also hurting that individual. And I think that we still, that's not to negate consequences. There is consequences, right? And repercussions for whatever they done, but there's a way that as believers that we have to go about doing that.
Absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree. So, where are you now as far as your perspective when it comes to your singleness, dating? So you moved past, like, you back here in Dallas and you got your
Yeah.
son full custody. You are building a life for you and him. Where are you now with your dating life?
Um, my antennas are up. I'm a lot more. I would say that I'm more vigilant now than I was when I was 21.
Okay.
So the way I choose is very,
Different than
yeah,
what you
than
did.
what I chose.
Unpack
But
that. So what do you choose now? What are you looking for? Like, what, and not even just you, can you speak for, I would say a general population of single men of God? What is the single man of God looking for in a wife?
the single man of God should be looking for a woman that loves God more than him.
Say that.
Yeah. Sometimes we say, I need a woman who loves me more than I love her. No, you need a woman that loves God more than you love her, because you're gonna fail her, and then that love may change based upon that. But if a woman fears God, every decision that she makes is gonna be from a kingdom mindset as opposed to a fleshly mindset.
But what, I have a question. What
Yeah.
about the scripture that says why husbands should love their wives as Christ loves the church,
Yeah.
and wives should what?
On or submit
Submit
or
or
honor.
honor.
Yeah.
So I think that it's quite the opposite. I think that the way that, if we're going to look at it from a biblical lens, that the man needs to love, he should, I agree with what you're saying, like, wholeheartedly. I think each person should love God more, but it explicitly says in the Bible that a man is supposed to love his wife as Christ loves the church.
Right.
Love starts with him.
Yeah. So every Christian is commanded to love agape.
Absolutely.
That's a willful love that goes beyond and transcends the natural, and transcends feelings and emotion. And it seeks the very best for its object. It's referred to as agape, right? The highest form of love. And we're told to love one another in that sense. So I believe that just because it says Christ, love your wife like Christ loved the church, love your wife like Christ loved the church, I don't think that then negates vice versa.
Yeah.
But it's just saying, like, remember this, and this is your duty. But there's still reciprocity that
Yeah,
should be there.
because that's what I was getting to. Is
Yeah.
like, I wholeheartedly agree with you. Is, you said that a man of God should be looking for a woman who loves God more than she loves him, because a man will fail a woman. But I really don't hear conversations a lot of times from men validating that a woman may also fail a man, and he is due her that same kind of love.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I don't
And,
hear that a
yeah,
lot.
a lot of men, like, if a woman cheats or is there infidelity, they'll cut them off then.
Oh wow.
Right
See,
then.
now you talking about, now pray for me right there. Pray for me right there. Sorry to cut you off, but I'm still being delivered. I don't, let me just, because I don't want anybody to be influenced by my statement, but just me personally, I wasn't referring to cheating. I just think, because that's just a decision that people just need to make, to either do or not do.
Yeah.
And I don't advocate for it. And I do know
Of course
that
not.
sometimes we fall. I know sometimes we
More
do,
than not, do
right?
you
And we
think?
never say
Yeah.
never, but I do. I wasn't. I was Xing that part out. I was just talking about, like, it seems like sometimes, and I'm not saying it's true, but it can seem like there's an expectation for a woman to just, continue ride for her man and know that, since I love God, I can expect that, hey, my husband's going to fail me, but I'm still going to ride, and that's fine. But is that man going to have that same perspective about when his wife fails him in any other area? And I was isolating, cheating. We're going to put that in a different category. But let's just say, in any way, even just from a communication standpoint or an emotional standpoint, is he willing to give that same energy
That's
that
what I'm
he's
talking
asking
about.
for? Yeah.
But that's in terms of infidelity. I'm talking about the man forgiving the woman, because a lot of times the man will drop the woman because it's looked upon, or there's a certain pride or ego that a man has in that sense, and so they're harsh on the woman. Is expected to forgive because that's what men do. But when a woman does it, a lot of times the man just cuts them off and banishes them and doesn't give them grace and mercy that the woman has given them. So I believe that it goes by. I believe that the man should give a level of grace and mercy to their spouse. But in terms of communication and in terms of what you're talking about, there has to be. The Bible says, "Behave with your wives in an understanding way, that your prayers be not hindered." And then it talks about remembering that the wife is a weaker vessel, etc. So yeah, if you don't have grace and mercy in a relationship, your relationship is doomed to fail.
Stephen, you just said something. This is a revelation I received many years ago when I was in a space of, I don't even know what to call that space. It was like on the cusp of my divorce. And I read that scripture, and something God revealed to me just at large. He shifted my perspective. Like when about, you just talked about a man is supposed to do what to his wife, and so his prayers won't be hindered.
Be understanding.
Be understanding.
Yeah, men can be very hard and egotistical, and they sometimes don't have empathy. They're just, this is what I say, this is what I mean, and this is what needs to be done, and this is my expectation. And
it hinders his prayers.
Yeah.
Literally, there are like unanswered prayers. That's a biblical statement.
And his soul is compromised.
Why is that though? Because again, what are women to God? Right? I'm saying, I'm just wondering, just from your perspective, why would that be there in the Bible? Like, why would God feel that way? There's something about a woman, the intricacies of a woman in God's perspective, so different than our perspective, that God is saying, if you have a wife and you don't have that understanding, you are harsh, your prayers will be hindered because of how you treat her. I wonder what that thing is. What is that, do you think?
It could be that women typically, and this is not to negate anything from man, but I think because they may operate more so from the emotional side, I think that there may be a level of how she reacts and responds to hurt, to pain, or to whatever level of knowledge, whatever it is. I believe that because of that, and because men typically operate from, and it's not to say that women don't operate from logic, but men can be very logical in their thinking. They can lack empathy a lot of times, and they forget that the woman operates differently, and that the woman has a certain set of gifts or a certain set of responses that we don't have. And sometimes men forget that, and they just walk around callous and hard, and they can be kind of like a drill sergeant as opposed to that love. And I think that goes hand in hand with the scripture that says, love your wife like Christ loved the church. The church has failed. You have failed as an individual. And sometimes we don't give that grace and mercy that we expect Christ to forgive us.
Right.
And to give us when we fail.
Right.
And so that's just God saying, like, remember who they are, and that they're an individual, they're a person, they have feelings and they have emotions, and they may respond different from you.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. And we're going to get into talking about the women too, because this is not a bad session on men. I don't want no viewer to feel like that.
Oh, no.
But I do think that something that I just kind of captured while you were talking, when we go back to that scripture of like, why would God say a husband's prayer is literally unheard, prevented, blocked based on how he treats his wife? I think that it begins in the garden. God, the world started with man and God, not a woman, with God and man. And then he gave man a woman, which is a weaker vessel. And regardless of how anybody feels or thinks in the culture, I know that there's a, like, the feminist movement is prevalent and has been prevalent. I know we like to say we like to be equal. That's equality. I'm not even getting into that conversation because we'd have to go into the definition of what that looks like. I do believe in reciprocity, but just inherently, women are weaker vessels than men, the way that God formed a woman. So that, to me, I feel like that's why God has put so much stock in, hey, because you can strong arm, you can dominate her. And I'm not just talking about with physical strength. I'm talking about emotional strength,
yeah.
right? Now, you do have manipulative, lying, unloving, deceptive women. That's not to negate that and say that that doesn't exist. I just think from God's worldview, from his perspective, and he decides, we don't get to decide what he determines, right? It's not my opinion. It's not your opinion. Women are a weaker vessel. And it's even proven, like it's scientifically proven. It's proven with statistics that men are, just from a strength perspective, just even from an influence perspective, can influence. Yeah.
I'm raising my.
You raising your hand. You want to interject?
I'm in the
Yeah.
classroom.
Yeah.
We can see it in example. And this is not any bash on the church. I go to church, but when you see the church is predominantly made up of women, when you look at cults, when you look at pimps and prostitutes, there's not men on the corner, and the pimp woman is like, hey, get. You see a bunch of women, like being rude and ran. They don't, and to the point where they're not asking questions. And I think that's why a lot of men aren't in these local churches and stuff like that. A lot of times, and it's not the bad, because there are good congregations out there.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, the men see the game and we see it, and the women are like, yeah, he's the best, and we're like, nah, he's deceptive.
Oh, you talking
But
about
you
when
drinking the preacher pimp Kool-Aid. And you looking at him like, wow, he's it. And the man like, look, he getting over on her. He over there with her.
Right.
But you can't see it because, Eve, here's this.
Right.
You will not surely die.
Yeah.
And the man like, hold on now, God told us this.
Right.
But so when you look at in the streets, men here, hold this, do this. And the woman just like, yes, sir. Where you want me to hold your pistol? Where you want me to put it at?
Right.
And they get captured and captivated in correctional facilities, and the man just like got him. She done lost her whole job, the teacher. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think you can see it play out, the weaknesses all the way from the beginning in the garden.
That's something.
He ain't coming to the man. He went to her.
Man, I learned a long time ago, I'm not getting in the ring with a man. I am, from a ministry standpoint, I consider myself a ministry influence. I've helped a lot of people. I know who I am in Christ. I love him. But I found out a long time ago, I will not go get in a ring with a man. In other words, what I'm saying, and I'm not talking about like a boxing ring. I'm talking about, I learned a long time ago in my youth that I tried to play the game in terms of, a man hurt me, I want to hurt him back. Not from a fidelity standpoint, because I don't stand for cheating.
I got you.
But I'm talking about like, man, like, I knew that I couldn't win. I knew that, because at the end of the day, I'm an emotional being. I'm somewhere hurt. I'm somewhere crying. And I don't even believe in playing that game. I just believe now in setting boundaries and, keeping my peace, trying to keep the peace at least. But I just know, like, inherently as women, even as a woman, as people consider as powerful as me, I am very well aware of my weakness, right? So, okay, let's get back into the conversation. Huh?
Dating, the conversation.
Dating. Let's get back into that.
Yeah.
So, you say you're looking for a woman that, or that would be your preference. If you were looking for a woman, she needs to love God.
Accountable, empathetic. They have to be accountable. They always say women are known to not be accountable. You know what I'm saying? It's somebody else's fault.
Do you
it's not
believe
my
that?
fault. I believe people in general, but yeah, I see it.
Okay.
Whether it be accountable with their children and how they parent, or whether they be, the mistakes that they've made. Sometimes when I see when the emotions are high, like they say, emotions are high, logic is low. And when you're emotional and you're so focused on you, and you play a victim type mentality, instead of you looking at your actions sometimes you tend to vilify and to project and to focus on what somebody else did to you, and they tend to seem not to see their part in it as well. It's like, look what he did to me. But hold on, there's some neglect that was on your side as well. And so I think that one of the main attributes that a woman, like if I'm looking for a quality woman, I would say accountability and her ability to empathize with the man, because sometimes women are very hard on men. They expect men to be supermen. And so if a man communicates, or if a man is more on the emotional side, everybody have emotional, they represent them. They're represented differently or manifested differently. But I think that sometimes when a man is vulnerable with a woman, they can use that as fuel. They can use it as ammunition to destroy him or to emasculate him. And so I look for a woman that can be empathetic and that can be considerate, that this is a person, that he's not just some financial tool or some happy wife, happy life thing.
Or robot.
Robot, that this is how he performs. And if he's not, he's less than a man, and he's weak because he doesn't operate like your ideal alpha male that the world has told you what an alpha male is. And I think so. I'm looking for that, and just a woman that's willing to grow and to develop, who seeks truth and who does not allow her emotional side to overrule her logic. But she has that emotional balance, and she is emotional, but at the same time, her logic and her love for God and her duty to God exceeds that emotional side.
Absolutely.
Because if she doesn't have that, her emotions are going to win every time, and she can just be wooed away. Men too, but we're talking about women. They could just be wooed away and swept away. My man is not this, or this is not happening. Emotional response, I'm going off, and I'm going to seek something else, because my happiness matters more than my family and more than God and His word. So yeah,
that's deep. That's good.
So that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
But I think that the struggle that being a single man is keeping our passions under control, and that tendency to want to
compensate
and to be sexual.
Right. So it's compensate because you're not yet in covenant.
Exactly.
Right.
And women struggle with that too.
Absolutely.
But I'm saying men, obviously,
the
the world of the sex industry is dominated by men making it rain and paying, and you got this, the entertainers, and the men are there, and the men doing what they do, and that's like we're very physical. Not to say that women don't turn up too, but men are known to be in the Bible. You know what I'm saying? John the Baptist's head was cut off because he made a pact with his daughter-in-law. Like, she came in there dancing, and the mother was like, bring John the Baptist's head on the platter, because he made a decree that whatever you want, I give it to you. And she went in there dancing. Bands will make her dance, and and so John the Baptist is beheaded because of that.
God.
You know what I'm saying? When you look at Solomon, Solomon wrote Ecclesiastes and Proverbs, was one of the wisest men that ever lived. And yet, in his old age, the Bible said that his wives drove him away from God, and he
had too many.
And to have high places, and to, you know what I'm saying? David was wooed away on the top, saw a woman bathing, and here he go. Now his whole family cursed because of his flesh.
Yeah.
And I think that trying to maintain that self-discipline is very hard.
It's a struggle.
Yeah. And I would say just making sure that my intentions are pure, and that I remember who I am in Christ when I'm dealing with women. That has been a struggle at times, and I'm very open about that. And we can get in that if you want to get into it.
No. We're not gonna get into that. That's gonna be episode 2.
Okay.
We do want to get into that, but not this episode.
All right. Yeah.
So as we pivot the conversation, before we, close out the episode, statistically, women outweigh men. It's way more women that populate the earth than men. So that means men have the advantage when it comes to relationships, dating, marriage, because they're just from a number standpoint, right? A choice standpoint. So, and now then we narrow it down to women of God. It's a lot of single, wholesome
Oh yeah.
women of God. So what has like where's the struggle? Like where I don't because I from my perspective, I feel like it's more of a struggle for a woman to actually be
Fine.
found or find a wholesome, self-aware, loving, as you said, convicted, loving God more than him. You know what I'm saying? Who is also a balanced person. It's more of a struggle for a woman to find that or come into that. So I'm interested to know like where's the struggle for the man with all these options.
Compatibility.
Okay.
It's not so much as it's not so much that a man can't find a good woman, but rather, sometimes you may differ in doctrinal issues, or
Correct.
you may it just may be a personal issue, a personal preference thing,
Yeah.
right?
So okay, let's touch on preferences. Cause it's a whole bunch of people I know I could hook you up right now.
Oh yeah.
But do you have preferences as a man of God outside of the spiritual? Are there other preferences?
Oh yeah. You know my preferences, but but I would say that's something that I struggle with, because I pray to God to take, because sometimes my physical preferences, and men, we want certain things we're attracted to physical, right?
Yeah.
And we want, what they say, fun, fit, and fun, or friendly, fit, and friendly, or something like that.
I don't know,
Right? Yeah,
but I know
whatever.
what you mean.
But
though.
that's just, we got our preference. We want them to look a certain way, and I think that's been a struggle with me. I want my woman to look a certain way and have those godly qualities.
So you want her to be spiritual and look like a stripper?
No, I ain't say that, y'all. She
I'm
said
just
that.
asking.
Y'all hear this lady?
I
No,
said.
I got you.
I'm just asking.
No,
You wouldn't mind though,
no,
right?
no. I wouldn't mind. Like I said, that's fine. Turn up in the bedroom with your husband. But that's not what I'm saying, though. What I'm saying is, that's what we have to focus on, though. And that's what I battle with. Sometimes this godly woman, sometimes what we need doesn't come packaged in what we want at the same time. And sometimes I think myself, I can let some really good woman pass me by because I'm focused on the physical. And that's not to say, so now don't get me wrong.
Attraction
if
does
you're
matter.
if you're physically attractive and you're not spiritual, I'm good
Facts.
either way.
Absolutely.
So I'm not saying
Same.
that overrides, but I'm saying sometimes I think that I could have been married because I have come across good women, but because of sometimes my physical preferences get in the way of what I need.
So you're looking for a just the total package. Well,
Right.
let me tell you this. I wholeheartedly
Not total. I ain't gotta be
right.
all perfect.
I get what you're saying.
But,
Not perfection. I'm there too, though. I get what you're saying. I do feel like sometimes we can be like extreme. I don't feel like I'm an extremist, but I do feel like attraction does matter.
Our expectations have to be realistic too.
And beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Oh,
There
of
are
course.
people that I know who would never look past me twice, and I'm okay with that.
Right.
So, and I'm not projecting any sense of like determining what beauty or in a man or a woman looks like. So I think that that attraction does matter, and I do want to validate that too, because in the Christian community, sometimes like we undervalue that, and sometimes it's as simple as just taking care of oneself and becoming the best version of oneself, even from a physical standpoint, which I'm a firm believer in. I'm a believer in taking care of like the soul first, right? The spirit, the mind, and also the physical appearance. I definitely don't see nothing wrong with it, and we can't demonize it, right? Esther was beautiful. The Bible talks about beautiful women. We don't know exactly what they look like, right? But we all can become the best version of ourselves. But when you talk about struggling with balancing that. What do you mean? Like, what are your preferences that you feel are overarching that prevents you from like having what you say you want?
You trying to play matchmaker? Just let me know. You trying to, cause I'm
listen
to the
ladies,
y'all trying to get me.
To all the ladies, let me tell you something. But if you and I'll just I'll try to be the wingman.
Tell you, I got you.
I'll try to be the wingman.
No, I got you.
Let me just say this to all the ladies. Here's a single man of God. You got to get to know them. You got to understand doctrine and understand theology. But in what are
I'm gonna
your
tell you my
preferences?
preferences.
Yeah.
Dark skin, chocolate. You already, you already know. I prefer black women. The darker the berry, the sweeter the juice, like they say. But ain't nothing wrong with the light berries too. They got good nutritional content. But yeah, all the berries got nutritional. The Bible say the herbs will put here to heal the land. But I like the darker ones.
Okay, so you hear that,
But
ladies?
and then I love natural women. Like I think a lot of women don't realize that. Like I'm wig, frontal, lace every now and then. Put a little lash on every now and then. But sometimes what women don't realize is that there are men out here, many men that still appreciate a natural
Yeah.
woman. You know
No,
what I'm saying?
I've heard
I
that.
grew up with fan ponytails and raps. And
Right,
we
right.
ain't want all this special fingernails with stuff sticking on top of them and diamonds and all that. All we had was French tips and a little, you know what I'm saying, and a couple colors. But I definitely prefer someone who's in touch with their natural side, and I think a lot of men do. Like, just to me, I always tell women, I tell young women that I mentor, less is always more.
Yeah.
It's more about the inner beauty, the hidden beauty, but at the same time, like, yeah. So that's my physical. I like not too tall, but if they tall and they good, you beautiful, you beautiful. And even a light skinned woman, my ex wife was light skinned. You know what I'm saying? And so yeah, there's definitely nothing wrong there. But my preference
It's shorter. Okay.
is black, yeah, dark skin, yeah.
In tune with
And
something
natural.
that you said is I hear this echo in a lot of places. I have heard that statement before. I heard some men say that most men prefer a natural woman, and that's great. I think I've also come across a lot of women who know that, and they don't like do it because what they're living in is their truth, and they're living based on what they like. You know what I mean? Like
Well,
they're with
pop
their
culture,
hair,
the
their nails.
expectations of
Well,
pop
not
culture.
not some. You do
Some
have
of them,
some,
some
yeah.
of them.
But some women just truly like being done up for themselves. You know what I'm saying? And so, but can be natural. But I think that that's a good point for the women who out there who are looking and may, maybe
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
the thing for that particular woman. But it's a lot of women out here who they do know
I
some
don't.
men prefer a natural woman, but they're just living in their truth with the things
Yeah,
that they wear.
I don't think the issue is so much of that they can't be done up every now and then. That just shouldn't make you. That
Absolutely.
shouldn't validate you. That
Yeah.
shouldn't make you feel more or less than
I just
because of those
love.
things.
Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah, you
You
can
are.
do yourself up a little bit,
First of
but
all, let me just applaud you though. You know what
yeah,
I'm saying? As a black man of God who is so self-aware, right? And you also understand like what matters most.
right.
And I do hear you even off this platform talk about that. And I want to validate that, and I want that to be amplified because I know it's a lot of narratives that spun. We hear a lot of the negative side of what is taking place, and it is a lot of negativity from men and women. But I do want to, you know what I'm saying, like just acknowledge your thought process, your mindset. And by the way, I've met so many men. I just talked to Tara about that. Like there are so many good men out there who have the same mindset, who, are very, aware of themselves, and they, value women for who they are. You know what I'm saying? It ain't all bad on either end. And I just love how you have such a balanced perspective of, both men and women. So anywho, we got so much to get to. I need you to come back because we got a lot to talk about.
Yeah,
Okay, we got a lot
definitely.
to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
I truly have enjoyed this podcast, this episode, because you dropped a lot of gems, you dropped a lot of knowledge, and you opened up. And I think it's gonna help as many men as we get this to. Will y'all help us get this in the hands of men? Some other men need to hear this, and I'm talking about the vulnerability and just his story coming back from being broken by someone that he loved. There's a lot of men out there who are broken by women. We don't hear those stories a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And so you bounce back, and it's all because of the grace of God. And I think you're still growing, still healing, but You on the right path.
Oh yeah,
You on
I'm
the right path.
much better. And I think the three components that helped me, even with my parents and with dealing with that situation, is accountability, empathy, and acceptance. Those three, and I didn't look that up. Nobody taught me that. I just got that from my healing journey and reading and going through therapy. That I had to accept the things that I could not change. I had to be empathetic of those who may have even hurt me, and to remember that they are people and that they have experiences, and that they're doing what they can with what they have and what their experiences are, and just being accountable and acknowledging myself and my issues and my faults in the situation.
Yeah.
And when I do that, and that's what comes with being the head as well. A lot of times we don't want to be accountable and we want to play the blame game. No. If God says the man is the head of the house, right, then that means that that's management ultimately. And when things go wrong with the company, management gets blamed. And management has to accept that a lot of times. And men want to try to shift that. No. But I think, too, you don't want to put too much blame, because it does take two. And I think the one thing that hurt me is because I took it all. And I said, I have failed my marriage, God. And I have failed and to do my duty. And wherever we are, I said, it's my fault. And I put all of the blame on me. And a lot of the women that friends and the people that I was dating, they say, well, you do have some things, but you had to give yourself some grace. And I think
Absolutely.
me giving myself some grace and realizing that it took two, that helped me in my healing process as well.
Well, y'all heard it. Y'all heard it from the man himself. Team 1K. Man, this episode was great, you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And listen, if you don't know, I need you to know. Go look in the description box for all of the people in my community, all of my supporters, all of my family. I have started a Patreon community where you can go and recap replays, TikTok live replays. Go look at it, see all about it, and go follow Team 1K on TikTok, on Instagram.
Everything 1K. So
you keep it 1K.
TikTok, team_1K.
Okay.
Instagram, Team 1K INC. But if you put Team 1K in there, my logo will come up, or you'll see something. Just go into it. So TikTok, I do Bible studies Monday through Wednesday on there, 9:30 Central, give or take. I'm trying to balance things out. And then I will be creating more content and more videos out there on these topics, on other topics as well. And so that's where y'all can find me at.
Thank you so much for coming. See y'all. Bye.